Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of PlayStation Pursuit. I don't have too many new games this episode, but I did get a couple additions that I needed. One in particular that I was pretty happy to find because I don't really see it often. And I got a couple more of my favorite PlayStation games I want to talk about. So stick around and I'll show you what I got. Okay, so this episode, I have only 4 new games to add to the collection, but they're some pretty cool ones. One in particular I'm pretty happy to have, because I don't really see it too much anymore. I can't remember the last time I did see it in person, so I was really glad to get it, and I got it really cheap. All of these games I actually got this past weekend when I worked a local event here in Syracuse. The event was Salt City Collecticon, and it's basically a Comic-Con scaled down, but still did a great job. They had over 2,000 people there, and they have comics, games, toys. They had like voice actors and artists and stuff from comics there, so it was like kind of like a scaled down Comic-Con with the type of stuff they had: cosplay, game tournaments, tons of stuff, but really cool. Even a lot of artists and stuff selling things. But what was cool about it too for me is that this is the first time that I've been on the other side of the table at a convention, because I bought a table space, and for those of you who already know that I've been selling a lot of my other games in my collection, not PS1, I had a lot of games that I packed in the car and brought to the con. I got one table space for myself and I actually shared it with my nephew Cameron and his girlfriend Caitlin. Actually, it was really cool being on that side of the table and selling stuff. I haven't done that on this level. I mean, I've brought some things to a con and shared a table with a friend, but I still was not tethered to the table as much. But it was kind of cool because I think if you have enough stuff to sell, it's kind of neat because there's always somebody looking. You know, if I bring like only a handful of games to something and try to stand at a table all day, it'd probably grind at me all day being stuck to the one spot. But I had a blast, and I had some friends stop by, and yeah, it was pretty cool. I brought games from all sorts of systems and had them set up there. Had a couple like figures and extra stuff like that there too, but I did very, very well. I was worried beforehand that I wouldn't make that much beyond the initial cost of the table, but I ended up making a lot more, and it sucked to see a lot of these games go. Some of my childhood games sold and everything, but everybody was really happy who got the games from me, and a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this for so long. So I had at least 2 people tell me that I was their savior because they were looking for a game that I had, and so it pays to have those quirky, obscure games, even if they're not super expensive. So anyway, that was a blast. I had a really good time. Now, there wasn't too many vendors. Actually, when I was there, I was like, there's not too many vendors selling video games here. But that's because I was one of them, so I didn't really count myself. But I was like, oh, with me here, I actually brought a lot of games. So there was a decent amount of games for people who were looking for games, myself included. And my buddy Pat Milligan from River City Retro and his crew were there, set up next to us. And we had a Retro Game Con table to promote our con coming this year. So it was pretty cool. Had a really good time there, and even though there weren't too many other vendors, I did manage to pick up 3 PlayStation games at the con, and then the first one I'm going to show off I actually got from Cameron and Caitlin, because they had a few with their lot of games that they brought, but knowing that I like PS1 games, they wanted to hook me up if I was interested in anything. So I got Wu-Tang Shaolin style, beat up case, but everything else is in good shape, and it's a fighting game I've always wanted to play. And for those of you who don't know, this kind of was the real released version of the game Thrill Kill that back in the day was hugely controversial, and it never got released. You can still play, there's ways to play it on emulation and stuff, but the core engine of the game and the fighting and everything made it to this game. So looking forward to finally checking this out and seeing how it plays, and I'm sure I'll track down a repro disc or something that can play on a modded system of Thrill Kill, because I really want to check out what would have happened if that came out. It's probably tame compared to games of today, so. But that was really cool for Cameron and Caitlin hooked me up with that, so thanks, guys. Now, the first of the 3 games that I got at the con is a racing game that I really don't see much, but it's from 1996, so it's an early PS1 game, but it's in a small jewel case, so it wasn't a long box. And the game is called Rush Hour, and that's complete. Got a little tire tracks in the dirt on there. And what's cool about it is it's a racing game that's kind of from like a not completely overhead view, but it's like kind of like isometric and up in the air, almost like a helicopter chase cam. And I watched some video footage of it after I got it, and it looks really neat. I can't wait to try it out. And I never see it around here, so really cool addition to the collection. So as I said, there's not too many games, so I'm going to take a quick break, even though I only showed 2. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorites, some more of my favorites, because I keep telling you more and more. And I really like the system, so I have a lot of favorites to choose from. But there's also so many that I don't have that I've played, so as I get them, I'll have to tell you about them too. Anyway, stick around. Here are some of my favorites this week. Alright, so can't talk about my favorite PlayStation games without talking about this series, and you're gonna get a 2-for-1 deal. I can't just talk about one game, I have to talk about both. It's one of my favorite series of games on the PS1. I absolutely love it. It just plays so unique, and I have a lot of evocative memories of playing this game back in the day. So the game I'm talking about is Tomba for the PlayStation. Now I have both Tomba 1 and 2, but I'm going to talk about both because I just think they each represent a really cool step up in the actual series, but also are just fantastic games in their own right. So Tomba is a side-scroller, and I talked about this at a panel Megan and I did 2 years ago at Retro Game Con, and it's just one of these games that is known and popular in like the gaming and collector circles, but still a lot of people haven't played it. Now, the first time I played this game was on a demo disc. It was a PlayStation Underground jam-packed disc that you could buy at the stores for like $5, and it had a demo on it. And the game is just so weird with its like humor and stuff. You have this crazy jungle character with pink hair. You have pigs as the enemies, and there's like just weird stuff. Like there's these flowers that when you grab, they look like butt shaped, but kind of, you know, perish, but when you climb them and hang on to them, they make a little fart sound, so they are intentionally butt plants. But so it's just kind of weird at first. You're kind of like, what is this? But it's made by a lot of talented minds. Now, I can't remember off the top of my head who the names of the folks who put this together are, but I know they worked on Mega Man and Ghouls and Ghosts and a lot of those classic side-scrolling franchises. I just can't remember the name of the individuals, but they are referenced in our panel, which I actually have posted on our channel, so I might link it in the description below. But I think it was the fact that there were some of these designers behind the game that worked on some classic platformers of their time that went into this game and put the care into it. And what separates this game from other games in the genre, this is a side-scrolling platformer, but the enemies and stuff and your player character is sprite-based, but the backgrounds are 3D, and so there's some cool 2.5D tricks it does, moving the camera, letting you move basically into the foreground and background to add some extra layers of the level design, and it sometimes has like a 90-degree right angle turn that'll actually turn the level, and it'll stay a side scroller, but you rotate the whole area you're on, so it opens up the level of depth to the levels and everything, which is really cool. But that's not the only innovation about this game that I like. It almost has a sense of, I don't want to say an RPG because it doesn't play like an RPG, but it has that kind of questing and growth system, which I really like. So as you go through the game, you have an inventory, and you can upgrade equipment and abilities and stuff like that to use throughout the game that has that kind of progression, like even something like a Zelda title, but also like in an RPG. And that was really cool. But the questing stuff is really neat because sometimes you'll stumble upon something that'll open up a random quest, like a side quest, and you won't be able to do anything further with it after a certain point, and you might have to come back. So it adds a lot of exploration to the game where it's not like you just beat the level, it's done, boom. You go through a level, and it's not even a level, it's like an interconnected world. You finish one area, and there might be some stuff that you could always go back to finish and everything. And they give you, like, in the title, they might give you a hint for what it is. And, you know, some of them are more challenging than others to find out what the quest entails. But I love that sense of mystery and what next and everything. So, I wanted to show the disc off there, too. This game just hooked me from the minute I played the demo. I did all the quests in the demo except for maybe like one that I got stuck on, and then I was looking for this game for a long time, found a copy that was completely scratched up, tried to put it through a cheap home version of a disc buffer, and ruined the disc. So I found another copy, luckily, before it really spiked, and had this for a long time, and then Tomba 2 came out, and I found a disc only with one of those horrible Blockbuster Blockbuster security things on it that, you know, left 2 big gouges on the top of the disc. But it played, so I had a copy for a long time, and I finally tracked down this after years and years, actually sometime within the time I've been doing Sprite Lovers episodes, so really good to finally have it. And this game, the reason I want to talk about both, went fully 3D. So besides maybe a few items or flowers or something, I'm pretty sure everything was 3-dimensional in this one. But unlike most games that go from 2D to 3D, you know, oh, the graphics get worse. This is one of the very few games that I think, even on the PS1 with the PS1's graphics, actually looks better in full 3D. This is one of the best looking games on the PS1 in my opinion. The colors and the variety, I mean, it's so rich with detail, and there's so many different like areas you go to that have different backgrounds, like snow and lava, and there's like a mine level, and then of course the tropical greenery and stuff of the first Tomba game. And it looks so gorgeous. I mean, I love it. And it plays pretty much the same as the first one. There's, you know, the same going into the background kind of stuff it does to add a sense of 3D depth, but most of the gameplay is going to be from a 2D perspective, and the controls don't suffer from being 3D models or anything like that, or like the, you know, a lot of games go into 3D and they don't control the same as a 2D sprite would, not as accurate and everything, but I don't think this game suffered at all. So this series is just such an amazing series on the PlayStation, and they are luckily both available on the PlayStation Network now. It took a long time for translated version of this. They had like the import one for some reason on the PlayStation Network, but now both of them are on there, so you don't have to spend the cost, because I think these are like $80 and up a piece now, so they're really expensive, but glad to have them both. These are probably in my top 10 games for the system, so surprised I haven't talked about them yet, but had to mention them in this episode. So if you do want to try a really unique platforming RPG action hybrid, definitely check these out. Okay, so I spent a lot of time talking about the Tomba games, but I love them so much so I don't regret it. But another game that is a really fond memory of mine for PS1, I actually didn't play on PS1 first. Now, when I was younger, I had a Sega channel for the Sega Genesis. It was a monthly subscription that you could get through some cable companies. And my parents got it for me. I think it was like 12 bucks a month. And every month they'd update 50 games. It would download one game at a time, but it would have the list of 50 per month that would refresh and change some out. So I got to play pretty much every Genesis game growing up through that service. And one of the cool things they did was unreleased games and demos. So they had a copy of this game on the Sega channel. I played it and loved it, but because when I was in 7th grade, I didn't know anything about importing or how to get a chance to play this game. It wasn't until I got a PS1 that I was able to play that port of the game I played on Genesis, and it's a popular series, but this was the first one I played, Worms. So, for those of you who have not played Worms, a Worms game is a side-scrolling, and sometimes 3D in the later titles, side-scrolling, turn-based strategy multiplayer game. Not strategy like Command and Conquer or one of those types of real-time strategy. It's basically more of an action strategy. You play as a little 2D team of worms that you have a bank of weapons to choose from, and some of them are like, you know, just regular guns, but then your basic missile launcher, grenades, and the game has great physics. So if you throw a grenade, you have to try to guess the arch of it, plus there's wind. So it was really cool to, you know, first play this and see how the different weapons worked in different scenarios, and it randomizes the levels. It's like a random level generator, so the backdrops are like, they could be anything, and you can dig through the backdrops and everything. I mean, if you've never played a Worms game, definitely check it out. This is a good one to play. I don't see it too much. I've seen it probably a couple times out in the wild, but it's probably up there in price, not over $100 or anything, but it's definitely not a common game you see, but very fun. I feel like the first one is so good that all the other sequels and everything are just iterations. They add some cool stuff and everything, but they're not really so much better than this one. I'm sure they streamline certain things and everything, but what's cool about this one is when I played the Genesis version, that was a perfectly competent port, but this one, you know, had zooming back and forth so you could see the battleground and some tricks that the Genesis couldn't handle. So even though it's a very basic two-dimensional game, it still had that extra power of the PlayStation to give it some extra life. It's a very basic disc. And it had, one other thing that it had over the Genesis version is a little comedic cinematic sequences before the levels of funny things happening. And the games do have a sense of humor. The characters have funny little voices and everything. And when they die, it's like comedic sometimes because they leave their gravestone where they actually self-destruct when their health goes down. So a really cool game. And I really like the soundtrack to this game. It's kind of got this eerie, weird soundtrack in all the environments. So it's almost like too intensive music for a game that's so lighthearted. But definitely love this game, and if you get a chance to try it, or any of the series, definitely check it out. But this original one, is the one I wanted to shout out. Okay, the last game that I wanted to talk about is admittedly one that I haven't finished, but I really loved it so much when I got it and played it that I wanted to talk about this one. So, if anybody's ever played the Metal Slug series, or some of those side-scrolling run-and-gun games like that on the Neo Geo and other systems that have ported it, I love Metal Slug. It's such a great series. You have great 2D sprite work and just tons of stuff on screen. And this game is very similar, but has a couple other twists to make it unique. So the game's called In the Hunt, and it's a submarine game. So it's 2D side-scrolling, but you are a submarine. But similar to the Metal Slug games, you have tons of enemies coming after you. So it kind of feels like a mix of Metal Slug and like a shoot-'em-up, but in a submarine. And it has fantastic, very Metal Slug-looking 2D sprite work. And this is a basic blue disc, actually looks like. Let's get some color underneath there. But this game I was really lucky to find. I found it at the flea market for like $5, and this version is actually the harder to find version. There is a long box version of this game, and that one I know is pretty tricky to find. But this was a second release, so I actually got the more uncommon one first. But there's not really too much to say about the game. It doesn't add too much new other than the fact that you're in a submarine, but still is kind of a run-and-gun feeling game, or in this case a sub-and-gun, I guess you'd call it. But really cool. I mean, it's just filled with enemies, bosses, mid-bosses, and just the right amount of challenge. Now, I didn't beat it, like I said, so maybe the game sucks towards the end, but I doubt it. I played enough to know this is definitely going down as a really cool, underrated title for me. Pretty sure it was an arcade title, probably was on Neo Geo as well, because it has just that feel of like the Neo Geo sprites, the SNK kind of sprites, and it's not made by SNK, but maybe the arcade one was, I don't know. But either way, it's very Metal Slug-like if you like that. I definitely recommend checking this out. Alright, I got 2 more games to show off. This one I've been looking for a while. It's been in some of the stores in Syracuse, but just quite at the price that I'm like, I don't really want to pay it. I want to see if I can find it for less. And sure enough, I did. And one reason I really wanted to play this game is because I know it has dual analog controls before they became the norm. So it was kind of ahead of its time with controls. And it seems like it would work out well for this type of game. I think I might have played a demo of it back in the day too, because it's very familiar. And that's kind of why I've been keeping an eye out for it over the years anyway. Even before I was going for the full set, I've been looking for this game. So that game is Tiny Tank, and it's got a cool little tank character that you play as, and if I remember correctly, it has really smooth graphics for PS1. Lots of open level spaces and stuff that are fun to play in. It's got a nice fully colored disc, and this whole thing's in really good shape. And then advertising Bloody Roar 2, which I got in a previous episode of PlayStation Pursuit. So really cool game. Can't wait to really spend some time with it and play more than I did back on the demo back in the day. So really cool to find that and get it for a good price. And the last game of this episode is a fighter by Capcom that I didn't have. And there's a lot of good Capcom fighters on PS1, even though PS1 wasn't the best for 2D fighters. Compared to like the Saturn or the arcade, it still had good ports of them. And then it had a lot of 3D fighters too. This one actually has one of the characters from it was in the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and that's kind of where I knew him from, but I never played this original game. And that game is, and the case is dirty, so Star Gladiator, and I like that its subtitle is Episode 1, Final Crusade. So the first episode is Final something. It's like, Final Fantasy level of naming conventions. The first game in the series has Final in the title. But anyway, really cool looking game. It's got the artwork and stuff. It is very Capcom and the character design and everything. And it's a 3D fighter. but kind of sci-fi looking, spacey. I mean, Star Gladiator's the name, and the main guy has this laser sword that's not exactly like a lightsaber, but probably has some influence of it. But I wanted this for a long time, and I was really happy to find this at Show Up in Syracuse instead of having to find it out of town or something. So this game came to me. So I got to clean up the case or just get a new one for it because it's got a lot of sticker residue. But everything else is in great shape, so very, very happy to find this. So that is all in terms of new games. You know, some weeks are going to have more, some are going to be a little less in terms of my finds, but I was really happy with the finds this episode, so pretty cool. Let's see, I guess it's time for me to do a little number crunching, and then I will let you know what I'm at. Alrighty, so with these 4 editions from the Salt City Collecticon, I am now up to 320 PS1 titles so far, so pretty cool. I'm keep going up that slope little by little, and it's like I've been saying, really fun doing this. I mean, this game in particular was pretty cool to find because I've been on the hunt for this since before I've been going on this hunt for PlayStation games, so pretty cool to find one that I've been looking for outside of just the realm of going for a complete set, but it's definitely exciting to add. So that's this episode, a little shorter, but definitely glad to get these additions to the collection. So thank you so much again for watching this series. I'm having so much fun doing it, and you guys are definitely keeping the motivation strong by discussing the games with me and everything, and I really, really appreciate that because it's you know, I love that interactivity, and you know, it's definitely a good motivator to keep trucking along. So thank you again for watching, and I will see everyone in the next episode. Take care.